we started with the first points. We were talking about the stool of the Quran, or like the design or the way that the Quran was revealed. And Shaykh Jazakallah Khair talked about how a point that I thought was really important was the authority that the Quran provided, is that there was multiple commands, and that it wouldn't have been possible for this to have been the Prophet ﷺ's words, because it has a level of authority and a level of not blaming, but redirecting the Prophet ﷺ at certain times. And we talked about the example of Zaynab bint Jahsh and Zayd ibn Haritha, for example, that the Quran provided us with the feelings of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself, things of his own feelings, that he shouldn't be afraid of the people, he should fear Allah. And there's absolutely no way that we would figure that out if it weren't for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informing us, because the Prophet would not have said that about his own self, or not have exposed his own feelings. We also talked about the example of Abouseif showing the authority of the Quran over the Prophet, and that it redirected the Prophet and explained something he did wrong. The Prophet would have not known that by himself if it weren't the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that was another point. And then, of course, we talked about the sciences. And I love this point because I feel like there's two things. There's ideas that there's lots of examples of metaphysical or examples of miracles in the Quran. So also being told example of scientific proofs, and the fact that the Quran really does align with the fitrah, and that it has examples of geology and oceanography, and we talked about the examples of like embryology. And I think like I'm over there saying that if this was only found in like the 1980s or the 1970s, like it's only a couple 40 years ago, is that the Quran had that more than 1,400 years ago. So through science, through examples from the Prophet, through the authority of the Quran, we know that it is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.